Hello everybody, it is Mike's Talks and Thoughts here, and for any of you who do not know me, my name is Mike here, and this is Mike's Talks and Thoughts here, a YouTube channel where I talk about all things in the world of TV. I do rankings, tier lists, reviews, reactions, a whole bunch of great stuff here on the channel. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and a little bit about my channel here if you're new. We are here today with the Stranger Things Season 4 Volume 1 review. And wow, just a great Stranger Things day today. So with the review here, we're going to be getting into some spoilers here for Stranger Things Season 4 Volume 1. So if you haven't seen all the way up until Season 4, Episode 7, Massacre at Hawkins Lab, definitely skip until the end. I'm going to leave a timestamp here. Skip till then. I'll give my closing thoughts of a little bit of a recap here without spoiling anything, and then definitely go and watch it. But if you have already seen the season like I have, I'm definitely here to give you guys a little bit of a spoiler review of my thoughts. I'm going to be breaking down each of the episodes. Then at the end, I'm going to give a little bit of pros and cons that I really liked about the season or disliked about the season. And then, like I said, just some closing recap thoughts that won't be any spoilers, just kind of recapping my overall thoughts on the season so far. So yeah, Stranger Things was back here today on May 27th here, and wow, it's been 3 years since we have seen a Stranger Things release, you know, with all the delays and pushbacks, mainly from the pandemic here. You know, it was really great to finally see this season come to fruition here. And let's get started here with episode number 1, the Hellfire Club. So starting off this season here, we get to see all of the different groups here and how they're kind of going through life. We get to see, you know, Elle, Will, and Jonathan out in California, as well as Joyce here, Joyce with her new job. And we get to see a little bit of Elle and Will's school experiences here right before spring break. We get to see how Elle is kind of being bullied here at the start of the season here, and you know, it's really bothering her, and we can see how Will is also very affected by this with Elle. And we get to see Jonathan here. Jonathan is kind of turned into that stoner type. We get to see this new character named Argyle here, and I think Argyle had a very solid introduction here for his character here with Jonathan. And we get to see Joyce and her new job as like a telemarketer, which was great to see. And then we also get to see the kids back in Hawkins. We get to see, you know, Mike and Dustin with the Hellfire Club shirts on. We see Lucas here being a member of the basketball team, and we see Max, you know, kind of just turning everyone off, you know, as she is with the events that happened in season 3 here. Of course, with Billy, she's really still struggling with that. And, you know, I think they did a really good job of bringing these introductions here for the California as well as the Hawkins crew for this season. For the Hawkins crew as well, we also get to see Nancy here. We get to see Nancy's life as a reporter with the Hawkins High Post here. We get to see Steve and Robin's journey. You know, Robin is in the band at this point and still in school, and Steve is at Family Video, but they both work at Family Video at this time. Great opening scene with them. And we also get to see a new character in Eddie Munson here, the leader of the Hellfire Club. And I really just loved Eddie's introduction, man. This guy was just a great character, man. I really like how they introduced you know, Eddie the Freak Munson. I think he was a really great character, and easily had my favorite introduction here for the new season. Now here that I have addressed the main cast that we have seen previously and a couple of new members who added to the main cast, let's go over some of these side characters who have some importance here in this episode. You know, we see Jason here. Jason is the leader of the basketball team. You know, he's like the team captain. You know, they're preparing for the championship game, and we really get to see a lot showcased here with Chrissy. This was his girlfriend who was the cheerleader on the team. You know, we get to see very early on with interactions with Max that something is very wrong with her, or something is bothering her with her, you know, coming out from the counselor's office, and, you know, eventually her crying in the bathroom. And this was the first time we get to see a little bit of a glimpse of Vecna here. You know, Vecna has been messing with Chrissy here as we can see from the traumatic experiences that she's seen, and it was just made for really, really great TV. And she's just trying to ease the pain here, and she goes to Eddie the Freak Munson here, looking for something stronger than dope. Eddie is definitely trying to get her a little bit of a hookup here on the drugs here, and Eddie brings Chrissy back to his place where all hell just breaks loose. Max sees Chrissy going into Eddie's trailer here, and then just kind of has an off feeling about something is going to happen here. And Vecna strikes its first known victim for the season here. We get to see how Vecna just has this power or this ability over Chrissy, of course described as Vecna's curse, which we'll be getting into in episode 2 here. But Chrissy here, we get to see just traumatic life experiences that she's had with her mom, and that's kind of the theme here with Vecna and his victims. And we get to see Eddie, he sees Chrissy in this trance, and he's like trying to get her out of it. He's shaking her, and Chrissy gets the infamous Vecna kill here. Of course, what Vecna does here, if you have watched Chrissy, she gets levitated in the air, but all her limbs get broken and her eyes are gouged out. The signature here for Vecna, and Eddie is just completely stunned here, doesn't really know what to do, and that's kind of where they leave it here for episode number 1 here. I really enjoyed this opening episode here, but man, things really get more intense as we move later into the season here. Next here, let's go into episode 2, titled Vecna's Curse here. Now we eventually get to see Hopper here, Jim Hopper. We did not get to see him showcased in the first episode, but from the teaser trailers, we did know that Hopper was alive, and we see the events from season 3 here and how he survived, landed into a safe area here, avoiding, the explosion and being taken in by the Russians, and this is the first glimpse we get to see of the Russians this season taking Hop over there. So great to see that storyline here. And then we get to see Mike here going out for spring break. He eventually gets to meet up with Elle and Will and Jonathan. He gets to meet Argyle, and, we get to see, Mike and Eleven. They're trying to have a really, really good time. Elle's been writing back how she's like doing really well, while we as the audience know she's really not. And Elle wants to take Mike to the skating rink here, and with the skating rink, we have the trouble of boys here. This girl named Angela has been giving Elle a very, very hard time at school. Destroyed her diorama with Hopper in it, and it just really, really is an on-edge, tense situation here. Will is trying to stick up for Elle and Mike. He wants to make things right because he knows that Elle is not telling the truth to Mike here, but Will is really having problems of his own, being a third wheel, you can really sense that in Will, that he's just really upset at that. But as we get to see the roller rink scenes here, we get to see Angela coming in, and they pull this elaborate scheme to humiliate Elle in front of Mike and in front of everyone, which, is just so sad to see, man, because you want to see Elle do so great, because we love Elle. Elle is amazing. She's a fantastic character here, and when she's getting picked on like this, it's just really hard to see. And the stuff that Angela says and does to her is just really, really crazy. Elle is just, you feel so bad for her. And Mike, I wish Mike would have done something sooner here, but as we see here, 11 ends up going into hiding in the rink, and they eventually have another confrontation, Elle and Angela here, where she really just goes over the edge with the insults, insulting Hopper and insulting, Mike and everyone that she loves. And 11, just fed up, just smacks her with a roller skate here. And I think it's totally justified here. They blow this up to be such a big thing that, oh, they act like she stabbed her or something. You know, she just hits her with the roller skate. You know, I know it caused a lot of damage here with the concussion, you know, her bleeding, but if I was Elle, I would have gone a lot more crazier than that. I think she was totally in the right from what Angel was doing to her to fight back. And moving back in here to Hawkins for episode 2, we get to see the events that transpire after Eddie's trailer and the whole Chrissy murder scene. You know, is really crazy. You know, Eddie has to go into hiding because, you know, he's just really scared. And, you know, they definitely suspect him as a prime suspect because that is his trailer. And, you know, his uncle owns it. And Eddie was there with her when she died. And, you know, Eddie just flees off and no one was able to find him here for a while. But we see Dustin and Max here going to Robin and Steve trying to find the whereabouts of Eddie because, you know, Dustin is very keen on proving Eddie's innocence here in this case. And we also get to see a very, very interesting scene, and we see the spread of Vecna's curse here. So we get to see how Chrissy was affected by this in the first episode, and now we get to see here Fred here. This was the guy who was working with Nancy in the Hawkins High Post here, and we get to see when they come up to the trailer park to get an interview with the people, you know, he is starting to feel the effects of Vecna's curse here with the grandfather clock and seeing visions. Really, really crazy. And as Nancy and him are kind of going around, you know, he kind of wanders off and does his own thing while Nancy here is talking with Eddie's uncle Wayne. And I think it was so interesting seeing Wayne's take on the whole situation. He believes that Victor Creel has escaped the asylum and is back killing again. So this is the first glimpse here we get to see of Victor Creel. You know, he's a alleged murderer here of his family in the 50s here, and, you know, same kind of situation with the eyes gouged out, same sort of murder here, and that's why he suspects that Victor Creel is on the loose. We get to see Fred here. As I said, he kind of wanders off, and this is because of the visions that he's having. You know, Vecna's really tormenting him at this point, and he goes into the street, and he's very affected. His past traumatic experience that affects him so much is this past car crash that he has. And, you know, Vecna brings up those memories again. And, you know, he says, your time is up. It's time for you to join me. And he does his same infamous Vecna curse here on Fred, where he, you know, lifts him up in the air, breaks all his limbs, and gouges his eyes out. So, you know, just a crazy, crazy turn of events here. Vecna is already in 2 episodes and is already claimed 2 victims for the season. Next up here, we have episode 3, The Monster and the Superhero here. In this episode here, we get to see the events here of what happens at the roller rink. You know, the consequences that Elle has to deal with from what happened with Angela in episode 2 here. And we get to see, you know, basically, you know, the police kind of arresting her and, you know, treating this like such a serious crime. But eventually it all works out with Owens coming into the fray here, you know, taking Ellen, able to kind of speak with her about the situation that's going on at Hawkins here. So I think that was definitely great to see from this episode. Meanwhile, back in here at Hawkins, moving back into the Hawkins side of the story, we get to see the group here looking into the mystery of Victor Creel as Nancy and Robin are going to investigate the newspapers about Victor Creel here because, you know, Nancy gets that lead last episode from Eddie's uncle about Victor Creel and how he could be causing all of this. And we get to see, you know, how the Post are really putting out Victor as this insane guy. And we get to see this obscure newspaper here put out its own little take on how what Victor says about the events that happened. You know, he says that the house was haunted and possessed by a demon of sorts here, which just tormented him and his family here. So, you know, easily a great newspaper article here. You know, you never get to see the right person's side of the story here. It's always what the media wants to put as the narrative, and it was great to see this side taking Victor Creel's side of the story here. And so as Nancy and Robin are going off to look for Victor Creel newspapers and findings, we see Max, Dustin, and Steve here going to the school. You know, Max is able to get the office keys off of her counselor after seeing her, and we get to see her looking through the files because they want to know of Chrissy's thoughts with the counselor and if she had been talking about, you know, these visions or monsters that she had been seeing prior to her death. And we get to see how Chrissy, not only Chrissy, but Fred as well, was a client or a patient here of the counselor. So Max, you know, has been seeing the counselor and all her symptoms here add up. We get to see how these people were experiencing nosebleeds, headaches, nightmares, and just traumatic experiences from their past that led them to, you know, being in Vecna's trance pretty much. And as they're going around the halls, we see Max see the infamous grandfather clock, which, you know, is a bad sign. That's always the start that Vecna is getting in your head. She knows that she's up next because the timeline, Chrissy was 1 week, Fred was 6 days, and her symptoms were 5 days. So she knows that she is next up on Vecna's cycle here. And it kind of leaves off at that for this episode here. But next year, we're going to be into one of the best episodes here of the season. And that is going to be Dear Billy here. Dear Billy, the 4th episode here of the season. Just such a well put together episode with lots of things going on in this episode. So first here for the Dear Billy episode, we get to see Max kind of saying her a little bit of a goodbyes through letters here. She knows that if they're not able to find a solution here, that she is definitely going to be up next here, and she doesn't have a lot of time left, so she writes letters to everyone here, you know, being prepared because she is next in the pattern for Vecna's curse. Meanwhile, here we get to see Nancy and Robin following up the lead of Victor Creel, not only using the newspapers from last episode, but actually going to see the man himself. You know, they kind of stage it here as a academic scholar experiments to learn about the mind of Victor Creel, and they're able to manipulate the guy who's running the place to, you know, allow them to speak to Victor alone here. And we get to see Victor give his entire side of the story here. So here for Victor Creel's story, we get to see him talk about, you know, how his family moves into this house in the 50s after the war. You know, he had been in World War II here. And he talks about just all the traumatic experiences that he started feeling at this house, the hauntings, and, you know, he describes this creature that he's feeling as pure evil here, the embodiment of evil here, which was just, you know, crazy to see here. You know, he talks about how it first started off killing animals and then eventually moving into their own minds and own thoughts and causing just massive destruction among the minds of the people in the house here. And Victor here is able to describe his wife and his children, you know, dying from this curse here and, you know, just being so affected by it. But as we are able to see here, Victor was able to be saved. You know, we see him get this memory here of him being back in the war, but he is able to kind of escape the trance because of the music playing. His favorite song was playing, and that is very key here into saving Max. So we find out that, you know, Victor talks about like an angel calling out to him, or kind of like a lifeline here of sorts. But, you know, it doesn't really work out for Victor in the end, as he ends up, you know, being framed for the murder of his family. And we see him, you know, he's put in the psychiatric ward. And we always wondered now how he lost his eyes, if Vecna didn't take them. And we see here how he thought he was going to be able to reunite with his family by gouging his eyes out. And that does not end up happening. So he does that, you know. Really crazy to see the whole story here told by Victor Creel. Then here, as I mentioned earlier in this episode, you know, we get to see Max, and she's kind of saying her final goodbyes, just in case for anyone. And we see how Vecna is already kind of controlling her mind with her seeing her mother and all of the traumatic experiences that she is experiencing here at her mom's place here. And then eventually going to Billy's grave and reading Billy his letter. You know, really, touching to kind of see what Max was thinking and kind of trying to connect with Billy here. But as we see, Vecna is taking her deeper and deeper into the end here. We get to see Max able to kind of get inside of Vecna's mind here. You know, she sees the Creel house and everything kind of floating around. And Max is able to, you know, kind of see all of these other dead bodies that are kind of, you know, part of Vecna now. And it's just really crazy to see all of this going down. And then basically here we get to see the guys come in clutch. You know, Nancy and Robin are able to get back to safety and are able to radio Dustin of how to save Max here. And that is, of course, playing her favorite song. And they end up doing that as she is going, you know, floating into the air. They are able to put the headphones on to Max here as her favorite song is playing, allowing her an exit point from Vecna and able to return to her body safely here without Vecna getting to her. So, you know, a really clutch save here. Lots of stuff went on in this episode here. You know, the whole Max situation was a really big point of this entire season here. And, you know, it was really addressed big in this episode. Lastly here for this episode, just a little bit of a smaller point here. We also get to see Murray and Joyce landing in Alaska here. You know, they're trying to, you know, make this bribe or kind of get Hopper back with the ransom. Hopper, you know, is working with this guy, but the guy ends up double-crossing the guy who Hopper was working with. So he's able to, you know, take the $40,000, and then he's able to, you know, kind of drug Murray and Joyce here and then put them on a plane and looking to do the same to them and sell them here. So that's where we kind of leave off here with episode number 4 for the Russian storyline. Next here, we have episode number 5, the Nina Project here. Now, the first thing we get to see in this episode is that Brenner is back here. So we get to see Owens, you know, bringing Elle to this top secret lab out in the desert, out in the middle of nowhere. And Brenner is back, and Elle just really is freaking out all about that. But Owens knows that Brenner is the only one who can really kind of channel her powers back because of all the experiments that he's done in the past. And, you know, that's what they kind of try and replicate here with Elle. They go through past memories and flashbacks. We get to see a lot of the other numbers as well as, you know, how she's kind of reacting to it. And ultimately, this really leads to a lot of freakouts from Elle. And, you know, she really tries getting away a lot of times here. You know, first when she tries to go, she's not successful. But then the second time, when the guards, you know, are all on top of her, she ends up blowing them all away. You know, really impressing Brenner that she's able to, you know, somewhat get her powers back here. And, you know, they're just conducting all of these tests here on Elle to try and bring her powers back and help with the war. Meanwhile, here with the California crew, we get to see, you know, in the last episode, we get to see Owens' group and the government get in this big shootout. And, you know, Jonathan, Mike, Will are able to take Argyle's Surfer Boy Pizza van here as an escape route to try and get away here. And they were able to take the agent with them for Owens, but he ends up dying here. He ends up giving them a pen here, which has the number, which they were able to find by cracking open the pen. But then they realized by calling the number is actually for a computer here. So with that here, the one person that they know with tech skills in the area, they're going to try and find Susie here, you know, Dustin's girlfriend here. So this is the next step of their journey here in finding Elle. Moving in here to the Russian storyline for this episode, we were able to see Murray and Joyce here. You know, Murray and Joyce are able to eventually take over the plane that Yuri was flying here. You know, Yuri is not able to hear what's going on with them. And then Murray here, you know, he talks about knowing karate. And I really liked seeing Murray's karate skills here on point here on the plane. And it's really great to see, you know, this kind of matchup between these two goofballs. And, you know, they ultimately end up taking control of the plane. But the plane is so, you know, damaged here that they end up crashing the plane here. They are both okay. Everyone's okay. So, you know, they are able to somewhat sort of make it to where they want to be. Meanwhile, here with the Hawkins team, we are able to see them going and investigating the Creel house here. After Max's really crazy encounter here with Vecna, we get to see how the Creel house is really connected here with everything. And you know, they're able to pick up here on some subtle clues with the spiders and the grandfather clock. And eventually they make their way to the hub, or the eye of the storm of Vecna. You know, they're able to, you know, put their flashlights together and go into the one space that Vecna is kind of harnessing as his own in the Creel house. And this plays into the whole Eddie Munson story. So Eddie Munson here, I mentioned earlier, you know, he was running from the cops and basically hiding for majority of the season here so far. You know, he's able to be in contact with Nancy, Dustin, Steve, Robin, and Max and Lucas here. So we were able to see that, but for the most part, he's kind of on his own right now as they're investigating. And Jason and Patrick and a lot of the other guys from the basketball team are able to spot Eddie, and they go after him. But before this, we do know that Patrick has been taken over by Vecna's curse here. You know, the curse ends up moving to him after Max is not able to be taken. So we are able to see here how Patrick, you know, he's been seeing the grandfather clock here, whether that was at Chrissy's funeral or kind of just driving around with the guys here. And as he is going after Eddie along with Jason, we were able to see the infamous Vecna killing here with the broken limbs and the gouged out eyes in the water here. You know, Jason finally gets to see for himself that this is not like the work of Eddie, even though later on he still blames Eddie for the killings here, even though he just saw that he did not do it physically, but he thinks he's doing it spiritually. And we get to see here just a really nice shot of how the upside down and the real world are like really connected here. And we get to see how Vecna kind of takes his next victim here. Next here, we're going to be moving into episode number 6, The Dive. So here with The Dive, we start off with the events of Jason addressing the school here. You know, the cops are addressing everyone and they're all riled up here. And Jason comes in and talks about what he saw here with Patrick and believes that Eddie is at work here with this like spiritual devil reincarnated. And he's like, we got to have a citywide manhunt here for Eddie. Next here, we get to see more of Elle's memories here with the other numbers. And the main numbers we get to see here are 2 being like the most powerful of the numbers here that we get to see. And we get to see the helper more here in this episode. There was a helper in these flashbacks that has been, you know, communicating and talking with Elle here. And, you know, he really makes a famous line how he sees 11 in number 1 as well here, which, you know, becomes a key line later in the show here. But here, as I digress, we get to move back into, you know, the other numbers, and number 2 and all these other numbers are really jealous of 11 and, you know, are able to bully her. And we get to see just how early on 11 has been bullied in her life, starting with even back at the Hawkins lab here. And then we get to see the Cali crew. They eventually get to find Susie here, you know, that crazy household in Utah here. And we are able to see Mike, Jonathan, Will able to, you know, convince Susie to hear of getting the number and going on the computer. They're able to trick the dad out of the room, and Susie is able to do her magic, and she's able to get the coordinates for the California crew to find where Elle is stationed at. So, you know, that really builds in here for the episode. And finally, we get to see what the episode's all about, The Dive. We get to see Steve, Nancy, Robin, and Eddie all going out to the lake. You know, Dustin, his compass was malfunctioning as they go and find Eddie after the whole events of Patrick from last episode. And, you know, Dustin's compass is acting really strange, and, you know, he's able to detect that it is a magnetic force causing the issue here. And they're able to trace it to Watergate. And in Watergate, you know, Steve is able to go down, but he gets pulled down through into the gate, and the other people end up following him. So that's kind of where the dive leaves off here. We get to see those people in the upside down here. We get to see, you know, like them fighting demo bats, and it's just really crazy. And lastly here we have episode number 7, Massacre at Hawkins Lab. This was my favorite episode of the 7 shown here for volume 1. I really dug every single minute of this episode here. You know, we get to see kind of the follow-up here in the upside down with Steve, Nancy, Robin, and Eddie, you know, communicating with Dustin and Lucas and Max and Erica back in the real world here. You know, they're able to do communication through the upside down in the real world, and are able to find a gate here for later on in the episode. But without further ado, let's get into the big portion of this episode, and that is going to be the origin story here at the Massacre at Hawkins Lab. You know, we get to see this from Brenner's perspective to start the season off, and now we get to see it from Eleven's perspective. You know, she really channels this memory in. They want her to channel this memory. This is the one that Brenner really thinks is going to make the most progress here. We get to see the man who has been so good to 11 all season here, helping her. And, you know, he points out in his neck how he has like a tracking device, but a lot of people theorize that this is how they were able to stop him from using his powers here, because Elle is able to remove it. You know, they're able to try and escape. He makes up this story that Brenner is trying to put the numbers all against each other, and that they're going to be attacking here, and he wants Elle to escape. And basically here, one is able to get his powers back. The guards of the facility come, and we get to see one being a badass here and taking them all out, and we get to see the infamous scene of them showing their numbers 11 and 1 here. So we finally get to see the origin of number 1, which I actually did predict when he said the line that 211, of how they were very similar, how he reminded 11 reminded him of 1. I figured that he was number 1. It just made the most sense here. They were focusing on him a lot, so I definitely ended up predicting that here, which I thought was pretty cool that I was able to do. But I think a lot of people kind of picked up on that when they were watching here. But yeah, basically here, we get to see how the massacre gets started. You know, he kind of tells 11 to stay in this room, and we just see the ultimate destruction that number 1 causes throughout the entire lab here. It really gives great context to that opening scene here. And, you know, we get to see how he infamously, you know, is killing people the same way that Vecna is. And we kind of are able to start putting the pieces together, and we get to see the background story of this number 1 here. So for number 1, we are able to see how this is Victor Creel's son here. So, wow, they tie this back into Victor Creel. That's how it all originated at the Creel house, because it is Victor Creel's son here. You know, he's able to perform the acts in the real world here before there ever even was himself in the Upside Down. We are able to see how, you know, he kind of has this really cynical thought of the world, and cynical thought of like humans on the world, and how they're just kind of ruining the world, and he wants to kind of make the world a newer place, or a better place for him and others. He asks Elle to join him, and she does not want to, and they end up getting into a great one-on-one battle here between the powers of 1 and 11. You know, 1, we can see really has the upper hand here in the fight, and, you know, was able to lift 11. You know, the process starting with him gouging her eyes out, you know, with his infamous curse. But she's able to fight it. She's able to fight it. You know, she takes the advice that she learns from him earlier in the season of using a sad memory that makes her angry to channel her powers here. And she's able to use all of it and take him out, you know, taking him to the wall. And, you know, he ends up going right into the wall, and she ends up using her powers right there and disintegrating him into the wall, creating the Upside Down, him in the Upside Down as Vecna. It was just a crazy, crazy sequence to see. We get to see the origin of the gate, because this is the first gate to the Upside Down. It looks to be that the Upside Down has always existed, but there was never a gateway or an entry from the real world. And with this confrontation between 1 and 11, we get to see how it is finally opened up. And it just adds a lot of great context to this Vecna character. You know, this was a theory that tons of Stranger Things fans had throughout the years, that, you know, before the season Vecna, everyone thought that number 1 was the Mind Flayer. But everyone here is correct that the number 1 test subject here is actually Vecna, the leader of the Upside Down. We get to see how, you know, he was taken in by Brenner after being with the Creels, you know, and setting up his father with the murders here. And he just, you know, didn't like being a, you know, lab experiment here. And you can definitely see that here. You know, he talks a little bit about his experiences with Brenner here, and just makes for a great origin story here this episode. We also got a lot of other things happening in this episode. We finally get to see Hopper, you know, reuniting with Joyce and Murray. You know, they are able to pull this scheme after they land, where Murray and Joyce are able to take Yuri in as a hostage and stage it as Murray being Yuri and getting into the prison. And we see Hopper here. They're all fighting a Demogorgon. The prisoners at the Russian camp here are fighting the Demogorgon, and Hopper knows that Demogorgons do not like fire, so he's able to use the spear fire to kind of keep it away. And, you know, as Joyce and Murray end up taking over, you know, the prison, they're able to, you know, open the door for them to kind of get away from the Demogorgon. And, you know, Hopper throws the spear in just such a badass way. I really like that. And they're able to reunite here. So that was really, really great to see here. But as I was mentioning the origins of the Upside Down, and a little bit about how Nancy, Steve, Robin, and Eddie were all fighting down there, we get to see how, you know, they're able to communicate with the people back in the real world here. But Nancy ends up getting sucked in here to Vecna's curse. You know, they're able to get Robin and Eddie back into the real world through the tunnel, through Eddie Munson's trailer here. But Nancy does not make it through, and it looks like she's going to be like the next victim here. So how are they going to save Nancy here? It's going to be interesting to see. You know, the epic showdowns, it's coming soon with these next 2 episodes here in July. I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, that's going to do it here for kind of the review of these 7 episodes. So a little bit of pros and cons from this season. So starting out here with the pros, I really didn't think there was a lot of wasted seconds here with all the runtime. I was watching this and there was never really a dull moment or a moment that I fast forwarded through, or a moment where I was like, this is really like one particular scene dragging on through a lot of time here. So I really like that about this season. You know, I sort of like the groups split up here. I think that the Hawkins crew easily stood out as the best here from the season here. They really shined high. I think they gave a 10 out of 10 performance here. All of the members back at Hawkins. I think the villain, Vecna, they nailed it. The origin story here with Vecna was great to see. You know, kind of predictable, but it's what we wanted. You know, we all were wanting, you know, the main villain of the Upside Down to be number 1, the test subject number 1, because we were always wondering about the other numbers. So I thought that was just great to see here. Another pro from this season. I don't think there was a bad episode this season. That's another pro. There was no episode that I thought was bad. I think they're all solid episodes. For this volume here, I keep saying season, but of course I mean volume here, volume of season 4, and we get to see you know, a lot of these. I like the new characters, and Argyle and Eddie. I think that they're both great. So those are really the pros here. Some of the cons here from the season. The Russian storyline definitely dragged on a little bit. You know, that was definitely something that I wasn't too big on. That was easily my least favorite of the Hawkins, California, Russian. The Russian was easily the worst storyline to me. It really felt like it dragged on. I really wish they would have, wrap that up a little bit earlier in the season here. But, still, I think it was still a solid storyline here. I wish that, the California crew would have been up to a little bit more, moving forward here. But I feel like they're going to be really key here for the last 2 episodes, getting everyone back into Hawkins. But yeah, that's pretty much like the only cons here that I can think of. For the most part, it was a really great season here. I wouldn't say it was like a 10 out of 10 season. I really have to see how the last 2 episodes kind of finished for me to give a full review of it. But a little bit of closing thoughts here. I think this was a really solid season. I think every episode really hit. There wasn't really a dull moment. And, I think that they could have improved upon some stuff. But ultimately, it was a really, really solid season for Stranger Things. Living up to that Stranger Things quality, they had to be, high up there. And I think they did it here with these episodes. I think that they had multiple 10 out of 10 episodes for me here personally. And I think a lot of the characters worked really well. Just the dynamics we were able to see this season was amazing. And, I can't wait to see the last 2 episodes coming out on July 1st here. So, yeah, that is going to do it here for the Stranger Things review. Thank you all for sticking around until the end. If you have made it this far into the video, it's always great seeing your support if you're back here on the channel, or if you're here for the first time. I'd love to see you check out a lot of my other videos. I do a lot of great other videos on the channel, and hopefully you can find something that you enjoy here on this channel here. We're doing a giveaway at 1,000 subscribers here on the channel. So if you want to be a part of that, we're less than 200 subscribers away. Definitely hit the subscribe button if you want to be entered for that giveaway here. But I hope you guys enjoyed the Stranger Things Volume 1 review here. We're going to be coming out with a full season review once the season wraps up here. I will be going more in depth even, and also giving, a rating at the end for the season here. But overall, big thumbs up from Volume 1. Hopefully Volume 2 hits as well. So yeah, without further ado, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and peace out.